Hello everyone, I'm Rogini Govender, a consultant clinical academic speech and language therapist at University College London Hospital and UCL. It's a pleasure to talk to you today about the NIHR Associate Principal Investigator Scheme. Over the next few minutes, I hope to share with you some insights from the perspective of a chief investigator of a trial registered on the scheme. But first, I would like to acknowledge individuals that have contributed to this work, both my clinical colleagues and members of the clinical trials unit that I work with. So what is the Associate PI scheme? This is a 6-month training program initiated by the National Institute of Health Research and endorsed by many professional organisations, including the Royal College of Speech and Language Therapists. The scheme provides practical experience for clinicians under the mentorship of a local principal investigator. Clinicians are eligible provided that they are not already undertaking funded research or formal research training and do not have a research degree. I signpost you to this excellent website for further information. It includes a checklist of activities that need to be completed by a trainee. So please do have a look if you are interested in the scheme. So why did I, as a speech and language therapist, sign up to the scheme? Well, I first got involved with the scheme after attending an NIHR launch event in 2020. It was quite medically focused at the time, and when I asked, I was advised that there were no allied health professional trials registered, but it was certainly possible to do so. We all know what happened in 2020, and being in a position of leading my own clinical trial, I was quite concerned about how I would recruit participants to this trial during the pandemic. So I decided to register my trial called SIP-SMART-2 on the scheme. As you will see, SIP-SMART-2 is a swallowing prehabilitation trial for people with head and neck cancer. It is a cluster randomized, multi-center phase 2 trial with a focus on prehabilitation in swallowing for people with head and neck cancer. It was also one of the first allied health professional-led trials to be registered on the Associate PI scheme. One of the main reasons that I wanted to get involved with the scheme is that I was quite keen that allied health professionals who represent a third of the UK healthcare workforce had an opportunity to become involved in this, what I believed was an incredible opportunity to have AHPs trained in the skills to become a principal investigator. I also think that as a workforce, we are underutilised in clinical trial delivery and underrepresented in clinical academic roles, despite being very capable and willing to deliver research. So what did it mean to have associate principal investigators on my own trial? Well, I felt that it has been a huge benefit. Clearly, sites which were initially on the first cohort and undertook taking on associate principal investigators at their hospitals had quicker times to first enrolment following site activation. I also found that they were much more engaged with clinical trial recruitment, and there was therefore steadier recruitment throughout the clinical trial. Having a member of the clinical team that I could liaise with directly was hugely beneficial from my point of view as a chief investigator. It meant that I could reach target numbers at each site through constant communication. It also meant that there was a higher rate of data completion for patients where there were associate principal investigators at the trial sites. So this for me as a chief investigator was a huge bonus as we all know, that it is indeed quite difficult when we run multi-centre trials to be able to have oversight over absolutely every different hospital site that is involved in collecting data. And having associate principal investigators on site made the communication process much easier. But it also had impacts beyond the trial. And for me, this was something that was unexpected and unplanned for, but a wonderful, wonderful benefit of having trainees on my own trial. So we decided that as much as the scheme would benefit trial recruitment, it was also primarily aimed at developing the skills of trainees. So on the SIP-SMART 2 trial, the group of associate principal investigators from the centres across the UK that you see on the map were invited to form a discussion group for ongoing learning and to reflect and share experiences. We recorded our online discussions, and it wasn't long before we recognised that we had some very rich learning that we thought we could share with others. We looked to analyse this and the individual checklists from the trainees using an impact model. And here you see the evidence for impact model. This diagram represents the levels of evidence ranging from an individual at the level of self all the way through wider society or sector impacts. And as you will see, we found impacts at all levels during the SIP-SMART trial, from individuals talking about self-pride and being the first in the trust to be accredited, all the way through to societal levels, where participation meant that research was accessible to clinicians outside of academic hospitals. It also meant that we were capturing individuals and patients from groups that may not otherwise be inclined to participate in research. Now, I won't go through each of those comments, but I do encourage you to read through, because this was a hugely positive benefit of the trial that was not anticipated at the start, but is a clear indication of the value of the Associate Principal Investigator scheme. So here you see the first group of Associate Principal Investigators on SIP-SMART 2. And in summary, our findings show that the scheme was helpful in creating benefits and impact at multiple levels beyond patient recruitment. It was an opportunity for allied health professionals to demonstrate their capability in delivering trials. The skills acquired enabled them to undertake co-principal investigator roles in future trials, and indeed one of our members of this group has since undertaken a co-PI role on another head and neck oncology trial. It also improved equality and inclusiveness in research for both patients and staff, because hospitals that were not traditionally involved in undertaking research found that it was much easier to sign up through the benefit of having an associate principal investigator. And finally, I end on this lovely example of how one of the associate principal investigators used the opportunity as a springboard to assess her skills against the Researcher Development Framework, and successfully obtained pre-doctoral funding and is now applying for NIHR doctoral funding. There are currently 8 speech and language therapists that have been accredited on the SIP-SMART 2 trial. The trial has now closed but has recruited to target, and I'm delighted that many of the individuals who trained as associate PIs have gone on to do some kind of further academic work, a clear indication that the trial has had an impact in developing individuals' skills, not just with trial delivery, but also their enthusiasm to become more involved in research. I leave you with a few references that I hope you will find useful if you wish to seek further information, but I would also be delighted if anyone wants to talk further about the scheme and would like further information. Please do feel free to contact me via email or via social media. Thank you for your attention.